Good morning and happy Sunday, everybody. Pastor Brian here. This is it. This is the end of our series, Paul's Playlist. It's been an amazing journey. I've gotten a chance to listen to a lot of very good music, and I hope that you took some time to listen to the music yourself on the playlists, which again are going to be linked in the description of this video for your listening pleasure. But we do come to the end of this series as we round out the end of September and start looking forward to October, the Halloween season, and the series that we'll be doing with that. One of the questions that I've been asked at least a couple of times since it started is, why do a series about music? You hear about sermon series involving hymns, hymnal music, gospel music, but rarely do you hear a whole series on secular or pop culture music as it relates to the church. And the answer that I have is a very simple one. It's because since the earliest days of the church, music has been a vital part of worship. From those earliest gatherings of the disciples to those earliest churches to the even as the church grew and separated time and time again, one of the things that has been central universally throughout the church is music. And I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a denomination that values music very highly. I'm a part of the what is currently known as the United Methodist Church. We come from the Methodist tradition, as it was started by John Wesley and his brother Charles Wesley, one of the most prolific hymn writers of all time. And because of Charles Wesley's influence, we as Methodists pride ourselves on our music, sometimes to a fault. But it's so ingrained within us that we even get made fun of it at some points. I'm going to be reading a little blurb from a man named Garrison Keillor, who was the host of a long-running show on NPR called Prairie Home Companion. Maybe some of you were fans of it. When Garrison was on it, maybe not, but he did say something about Methodists once. He said, "We make fun of Methodists for their blandness, their excessive calm, their fear of giving offense, their lack of speed, and also for their secret fondness for macaroni and cheese. But nobody sings like them." If you were to ask an audience in New York City, a relatively Methodist-less place, to sing along the chorus of Michael, Row Your Boat Ashore, they'll look daggers at you as if you had asked them to strip to their underwear. But if you do this among Methodists, they'd smile and row the boat ashore and up onto the beach and down the road. Many Methodists are bred from childhood to sing in four-part harmony, a talent that comes from sitting on the lap of someone singing alto or tenor or bass and hearing the harmonic intervals by putting your little head against the person's ribcage. It's natural for Methodists to sing in harmony. We're too modest to be soloists, too worldly to sing in unison. When you're singing in the key of C and you slide into the A7th and the D7th chords, all 200 of you, it's an emotionally fulfilling moment. By our joining in harmony, we somehow promise that we will not forsake each other. I do believe this. People, these Methodists, who love to sing in four-part harmony, are the sort of people you can call up when you're in deep distress. Music has been in my blood since I can remember. I was born and raised in the United Methodist Church. My maternal grandfather is a retired United Methodist pastor. I remember from my earliest memories going to church and singing in Sunday school, singing in church, and hearing how my dad would sing one part of a hymn and my mom would sing another part of the hymn, and they would always harmonize with one another. There is nothing more beautiful than hearing people from all walks of life singing together in one place. And the reason we bring this up today is to help lead us into this song that we have selected for today. The song itself is called "Stand By Me." It is one of the most popular songs of the 20th century. In fact, it was, according to statistics, the fourth most played song on TV and radio in the entirety of the 20th century. And I bring it up because the song itself has roots in gospel music, not just gospel music, but the song itself has roots in Methodist music. See, if you go way back in time, there was a man that was born named Charles Albert Tindley. He lived from 1851 to 1933. He was the son of a slave and a free woman. He was raised in the church. He eventually became a member and a pastor and a minister of the Methodist Episcopal Church. And over the course of his long life, his legacy, he managed to create many hymns, many gospel music staples, to the point where he is considered to be one of the founders of gospel music as a genre in America. You can look at hymnals around Christianity in America and even in a couple of other countries, and you will see songs by Charles Albert Tindley in those hymn books. He has over 50 in hymn books around the denominations, around the different branches of Christianity. But the two that stand out the most, which is why we're bringing Charles Albert Tindley up today, are one that he wrote called "Stand By Me." Sounds familiar. Which many Christians know by the name "When the Storms of Life Are Raging." And Elvis even did a cover of this song back when he was around, and he sung the first and final verses of the song for his version. But if you take the time to go and look at the actual song, there are about 5 or 6 verses, and they're all beautifully written. And that gospel song would eventually go on to be sung in a church choir by a man named Ben E. King. Ben E. King got his singing career in church. He began his singing career in church, and he went on from there as he was born in North Carolina and spent most of his young adulthood in Harlem. He went on from there eventually by 1958 to join a band called The Drifters, which has many, many, many wonderful songs. I have been so blessed to be able to listen to a lot of their hits over the course of this week in preparation for this sermon, including, of course, "Stand By Me," which you have an opportunity to listen to today, but they also have "Under the Boardwalk," "Save the Last Dance for Me," etc., etc., etc. But when he was getting ready to sing this song, they originally wanted it to be sung by the Drifters. And the Drifters didn't really want to do it, but it was one of the first songs that Ben E. King sang when he started his solo career in 1960. And the person who wrote the song actually took inspiration for these lyrics from that Charles Albert Tindley song, "Stand By Me." And it's not going to be the first time that happens either. Charles Albert Tindley will write another song called "I'll Overcome Someday," which then goes on to become "We Shall Overcome," which was one of the big civil rights era, anti-Vietnam era protest anthems in the 60s and 70s. "Stand By Me." It's one of the fundamental ideas in Christianity. And we talked a little bit about this idea last week when we talked about love, right? That in order to live a life filled with love as God calls us to live, we have to not only love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, but we also have to love our neighbor. We have to treat one another as friends. And a big part of that means standing by one another. Right, the opening lines of Ben E. King's version, right? "When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only thing I see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't shed a tear just as long as you stand by me." And that's the song this week. Because in the passage that we heard from Corinthians today, Paul encourages the church in Corinth, after he's done his whole spiel about love and the importance of love. He says, you have these spiritual gifts that were given to you out of love by God. You need to use those gifts to strengthen and support one another, to build up the church. A spiritual gift, Paul says, does nothing for anybody if it's not beneficial in some way, shape, or form. If you have the gift of prophesying, as Paul suggests, but nobody understands what you're saying, or if you have the gift of speaking in tongues and nobody understands what you're saying, what good is it? You have to learn how to make it practical. You have to learn how to make your gifts work for the benefit of the people around you. So what if you're a good reader, unless you're taking the time to actually try to get other people involved and excited about reading, unless you can share a story in a way that can meaningfully impact somebody else's life? Who cares if you're the greatest mathematician in the world? If you can't use that math to benefit something or somebody, it doesn't matter. We have to use the spiritual gifts that we've been given, and we have to do so in a way that strengthens everybody, in a way that builds up the church, in a way that says that we support one another. Since quarantine's been dragging on, I've had a lot of time to think. I've had a lot of time to reflect, and part of that reflection has been, what do I miss the most about how things were before, right? What do I miss the most about how things were before? And it's not, I'm very much an introverted person. I have extrovert tendencies, but I'm perfectly fine being by myself. So when this whole thing started, as stressful as it was for me as a pastor, I didn't really miss too much of things with everything being shut down. I was afraid for my health. I was afraid for the health of my family. But as time goes on, that fear, even though there's still plenty of reason to be afraid, that fear does dissipate a little bit. Doesn't completely go away, but it does dissipate a little bit. And when we started meeting together in person outdoors, one of the stipulations to that was that as Methodists who have a long tradition of singing, we couldn't sing together. And I think that's been one of the hardest things for me personally. And maybe you have different things that have been difficult for you. And I'm not saying this to diminish or belittle anything else. I think all of those things that you miss are pretty valid. I miss walking into church and getting excited about what songs we were going to be singing. I miss singing just in general. I have not been singing as much as I normally do during this time of quarantine because I haven't really been feeling the joy in my heart as much as I used to. And I know that that's a direct side effect of the quarantine. And then I started thinking to myself, just because we can't sing aloud doesn't mean we can't still sing. Just because we can't sing aloud because it can be a super spreader thing according to the CDC doesn't mean that we can't still sing to ourselves, doesn't mean we can't still sing in our hearts. Like Paul says, it's not enough to pray with your words, you have to pray with your mind. It's not enough to sing with just your voice, you have to sing with your soul. As a Methodist, I need to be able to sing, and I've missed being able to sing aloud, and as we prepare to move back into the sanctuary, I know full well that we're still not able to sing aloud, and that we'll still have to be wearing masks, and we'll still have to be physically distancing from one another. It's not the same. It's not the same. And the reason I share that struggle with you today is because singing is one of the ways that I've reluctantly tried to bolster the church. People tell me, and this isn't to brag because I don't really think it's anything to brag about, but people tell me that I'm a pretty decent singer. And I've always been kind of shy about it because it's not really something that I was comfortable with. I've never been a soloist at heart. I grew up, like I said, like Garrison Keeler said, Methodists, we're not very comfortable being soloists, though we do have many fantastic soloists in our churches around the world. We're far more comfortable when our voices are united together, when everybody gets a chance to shine. And that's always how I felt comfortable. I didn't take choir classes in school to learn how to sing. I learned how to sing in church. I'm not a part of any choir in church, yet I still sing in church from time to time. And I love being able to be a part of a body that is singing together, that knows the words, that knows the melodies, that each knows which part of the song they are best at singing and are most comfortable singing. There is nothing quite like listening to people sing in a church. There's just something about that music. But music is a way that we bolster one another up. Music is a way that we support one another. Music is a way that we build the church up. Because that simple act of singing, that simple act of being together reminds all of us, not even at the forefront of our thoughts, but somewhere deep inside, singing together, it reminds us that we're not alone and that the world is better when we work together, when we're striving for the same goal. And the beauty of singing is, it doesn't sound as good if you're all trying to do the same thing. If you're all singing the same part of a 4-part harmony, the song just doesn't sound the same as when everybody does the part that they feel the most comfortable doing. That's the beauty of it. Is that we can stand by each other, we can love one another, and we can sing in 4-part harmonies as Methodists, and it sounds beautiful despite the differences in voices. It doesn't matter if you consider yourself a singer. It doesn't matter if you're continually flat or continually sharp or you can't hold a tune or maybe you're monotone. Your voice mixed in with all of those other voices is what makes that song amazing. It's what makes that song special. And so as we round out our series on Paul's playlist, I invite you to celebrate the music of life. Not just to go and listen to the playlists that we created for this series, not just to listen to your favorite songs on the radio, but to go out into the world and to hear the harmonies all around you, whether it's the birds chirping or the cars driving by or people just chatting off in the distance. Don't listen in because that's kind of rude, but just take in the sound in general. Just take in the beauty of sound, that natural music. Hear how even the worst noises contribute to the overall sound of creation. Let your voice be heard. Don't be afraid to share your voice, because God gave each and every one of us a voice, a way to communicate. And it doesn't sound the same as the person next to us, but it is just as important and just as valid. What are you going to do with your voice to bolster the people around you? What are you going to do to help build up the church, not just in the buildings, not just when you're gathered together on Sundays or in Bible studies? What are you going to do to build up people using your voice every day of your life? What are you going to do to show God's love and to share God's love? I'll be singing. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we have been on this journey with you and with Paul for quite a few weeks now. We've talked about the potential for division that rests in the spirits of each and every one of us, of how society wants nothing more than to categorize us as people, as races, as genders. But through your servant Paul, we have learned that none of that matters. That it doesn't matter if we were slave or free or Jew or Greek or man or woman. We are all loved equally by God, and we are called to share that love equally in the name of God. That you have given all of us spiritual gifts that maybe we're aware of, maybe we have yet to discover. And that you are calling us to use those gifts to build up your church, to sing those 4-part harmonies alongside creation. And so today we ask that as you have stood by us through the joys in our lives and the difficulties in our lives, that you give us the strength to stand by others in the midst of their difficulties. Not that we might belittle their difficulties, but that we might support them, that we might take those difficulties seriously, that we might come to understand what they're going through. That we might use our gifts to strengthen the world around us. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. I hope you have a beautiful and amazing music-filled week. Get ready, because Halloween is on its way, and we've got something that I think you're going to like planned for the month of October. I encourage you all to go in peace and to find joy in each and every moment of life. I know thinking about the bigger picture things can be very difficult and very hard and very stressful that are going on right now. But there are still joys to be found. And my hope is that you'll find them. Or maybe that you'll even become a joy in somebody else's life. Until next time.